Welcome back to my channel, Ponderings of the Pre-Retired. My name's Lois, and I'm coming to you from Northeastern Ohio, and just wanted to talk a little bit and touch on a topic that has been relevant in my life, especially as I'm moving towards retirement. But I think it actually applies to so many of us, regardless of our age, our profession. It's a topic that I think anyone can really relate to, but I've definitely experienced this in the last couple of years, and that's called burnout. And regardless of whether or not you are a teacher, a police officer, a counselor, therapist like I am, or anybody in the helping field, I feel like we are really prone to burnout and need to really keep an eye on it because it can sneak up on us and have all kinds of different costs associated with it. So stay tuned to find out a little bit more about how burnout affected me, some of the things that I did to mitigate that and to navigate being severely burnt out in my work, in my profession, and just in life in general, and tips for getting yourself back on track if you're finding yourself in a similar situation. So, what is burnout? Burnout really comes from just long periods of time of stress, and it's a state of emotional, physical, and mental well-being that really compromises our well-being, and it comes from a prolonged amount of stress. And for myself personally, what happened was I started in the field of therapy and being a therapist almost 30 years ago. So this was probably 30 years coming for me. And definitely there were times over those 30 years where I was just really giving a lot of myself, working long hours, and in my career, just a lot of vicarious trauma, listening to people's stories that many times included really horrendous details, just really took a toll on me. In the last 10 years or so, even prior to that, I had a private practice, which is stressful when you have your own business and you're doing this kind of work. And then also in the last probably 10 years, I've worked in leadership positions. So not only being a therapist from time to time with clients and patients, but also supervising others who were in the field and new in the field and needed supervision, problem solving, staff shortages, picking up the short staffness at many different sites that I was working with. So just being in leadership and having that level of responsibility. And then of course for me personally, this may not apply to everybody, but there was also a lot of travel requirements. So I was away from home, which created a lot of stress for me. For yourself, I would really take a look at what your job is entailing right now. Are you being exposed to a lot of outside stressors that are outside of your control? Are you a first responder? Are you a teacher? Are you working with families or working with a lot of trauma and a lot of tragedy? That all takes a toll on us in the form of burnout. And burnout is that prolonged period of time. In my case, 30 years it took for it to really boil over. It could be shorter or longer for others, but a prolonged period of time of just feeling really stressed out and really pushing yourself to the limit as far as your energy level, your mental, your emotional, and your physical health. Some quick signs to watch out for to assess whether or not you are experiencing burnout would be things like not being excited about the things that used to excite you. Feeling drained all the time. Even if you've been able to get sleep, you just feel tired. You just feel drained and you just don't feel like you have anything left to give, even at home when you're not at work. Sleep disturbances and racing thoughts. When you're trying to go to sleep, but you can't stop thinking about potentially something going on at work or a problem that you have to address maybe the next day. So seeing that you're not sleeping properly, or your eating habits may change. You may find yourself eating too much, which we call that eating your feelings, trying to feel better by eating a lot, or maybe not having an appetite at all. Those types of things. Also, being more irritable. Your patience is shorter, your fuse is shorter. You find yourself, when you normally are a easygoing person, you find yourself losing your temper maybe more often than you normally would. Those are all signs. There's quite a bit more, but I just wanted to give some of the most common signs of burnout. So how do we start to recover? How do we start to dig out? First and foremost, we have to identify what is going on with us. We have to get in touch with and write down maybe, or talk to a friend or a trusted support person in our lives about what is going on. In my case, I talk to my husband because he is my support person. He is my safe place, and he's the person that I can talk to about anything. And so that's where it started for me. I also started to write down some of what I was experiencing, especially as I was traveling, and some of the signs of burnout that I was addressing and noticing in myself. A lot of times I was blind to it, but I became very aware, and I had a higher level of awareness. And as I did, I started to write that down and put it down on paper, and then talk with my husband, who was, like I said, my trusted person. But that's what I would suggest, some way to start to get in touch with your feelings of burnout, and then start to acknowledge them. Once we acknowledge them and we become aware, then they become front of mind, and we start to want to make a plan for addressing those and minimizing those and taking care of those. Some tips that I would give around reducing burnout is to allow yourself to rest. I don't know about any of you, but I would actually feel guilty if I rested. If I laid down to take a nap, or if I sat down, there was always something else that I felt like I should be doing. I should be busy. There's this that needs done, even at home, not just work, but in general. That was my general personality. In order to reduce burnout and to start to recover from that, we need to start to give ourselves permission to rest, and that it's okay to take a nap. It's okay to sit and watch a movie all the way through and not feel like you have to be moving all the time. You'll also start to reconnect with your joy. What is your joy? What brings you true happiness? Recently, in the last couple of years, I have started to reconnect with my joys. Some of them are gardening. I've talked about that in other videos. Some of that is cooking, including preserving and making homemade food and eating whole, organic, healthy foods. So what is your joy? What brings you joy? Maybe it's photography. Maybe it's being around animals or children. Maybe it's being in nature. Maybe it is a return to a spiritual practice that you haven't done for a long time. Whatever that is, start to identify what brings you true joy, and then start getting into that again. Start taking small steps. Maybe you don't know what your joy is. It's been such a long time. Start to write, start to journal, talk to yourself. I talk to myself. I have conversations with myself, and I know it sounds crazy, but I do. I have conversations, and I ask myself questions like, what used to bring you joy, Lois? What were the things that you used to love to do before you got so burnt out that you were closed off from the world? It's amazing how much finding your joy will help you heal from burnout. It's just amazing when I'm out digging in the dirt and I've got my hands in the dirt, or I'm watering my flowers, I'm nurturing things in my yard or in my home or in my family. My joy is just, it comes out of every pore. Find your joy. Next is realize it's okay to say no. You don't have to always say yes to everything. You can say no, and you can say no more often. That's like setting boundaries, not overcommitting yourself and then being resentful or reluctant or frustrated or, just stretched to the max. Don't burn yourself out by saying no or saying yes to everything that's asked of you. Start to give yourself permission to say no. And even if people get upset with you, even if they get disappointed, because if you've been a person who is experiencing burnout because you were a yes person and you committed to everything, you volunteered for everything, you were constantly the go-to person that took care of things like that, and now you're going to start saying no. People are going to have a reaction to that because they're not used to it. But eventually they will get used to it and they will understand. And especially if you just say, I just don't have the time right now. I just don't have it in me to be able to commit. And then finally, as a final tip, I would say that's been helpful to me is how I'm taking care of my body physically. So moving more, eating well, trying to limit the amount of processed foods, trying to limit the amount of refined sugar and carbs that I'm taking into my body. If I'm taking in carbs, I'm going to try to make sure that they have nutritional values. Like, I love vegetables, I love beans, I love fruit. I know there's carbs in those, and that's okay. I'm going to take those carbs regardless because they do have a good nutritional value to me. So moving more, trying to get out and exercise, ride your bike or walk, or I got my kayak out last weekend for the first time in over a year, or maybe even 2 years. And it felt so good to be out in nature, to be only hearing like the sounds of the frogs and the birds and the water as I was paddling through it. And I just felt so good to be back doing something physically active for my body. I was moving my body in ways that I hadn't done in quite a while. And I also felt that joy we talked about earlier, being close to nature and remembering this is something that I always love to do. Feeling that joy and feeling good about what I'm doing for my body really has helped to combat the burnout as well. So finally, as we come to the end of this video, I just wanted to remind you that you don't have to push through everything. You don't have to be everything to everybody. You don't have to commit to things that don't align with your abilities as far as time, commitment, or even interests. You are a productive person. You are an active person, and you're a valuable part of this world that we live in. Just know that there's no title out there, there's no job out there, there's no commitment out there that is going to define who we are. Just be gentle with yourself. If you're in situations where you're already burnt out and you have to stay in the situation you're in, that's fine. Just put some of these self-care tips into place in your life to help you cope and navigate the situation that you're in. And maybe down the line, you'll be able to make some other decisions that will help you to be able to reduce some of the stress and the stressors that are in your life. God knows we have a lot of stress that all of us are dealing with every day. So I totally get that. If this content has resonated with you today, if you feel like it's beneficial, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. Leave comments for me if you have some tips on how you've dealt with your burnout. I'd love to hear it because I'm still learning as well. And if you enjoyed this content, let me know. I would love to do more self-help and more self-care type videos as we move along in this channel. The channel's purpose is really just to be a place for us to build a community of other folks who are still working towards retirement and trying to be in the best possible place, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So thank you so much for joining me if you stayed till the end, and we'll see you the next time.